Lesson, your old Uncle Frank is going to teach you how to graph a simple linear regression using Excel. In this lesson, we'll use the same data that we used in the last lesson. The fabulous faculty at a very prestigious school of nursing has developed a hardiness score. This hardiness score is meant to predict how well the students would do in their first year of nursing school. We also have the GPAs for the first year of nursing school for each of the subjects in our study. And we have 15 different subjects in this study. So each line on this in this table represents one student, both that student's hardiness score and that student's GPA. Now we've already entered this data on our spreadsheet, and this is what we ended up with at the end of the last lesson. Was a spreadsheet that looks something like this, I believe. So if we've got the data for hardiness in column A, and we have the data for GPA in column B, and what's in D, E, and F we actually don't need right now, but it's just left over from the last lesson. So if you have what's in column A and column B, we're just fine. Now what I need you to do is to highlight the data. And we can highlight the data by clicking the bottom number in column B, which is the 3.09, clicking on it and holding our mouse button down, and then dragging our mouse button to the left and up till we get to 0.68, the top number in the hardiness score. What should happen is all your numbers should turn a different color. Depends on your computer and depends on your screen. Mine turn purple or kind of bluish. And all of the cells should change to that color except for the first cell you clicked on. Then when you have all the numbers highlighted, you should let go of your mouse button. You don't need to actually start with the 3.09. You could say start at the top and go down. You could have clicked first on the 2.61 and dragged your mouse button down and to the left. Or you could have started with one of the hardiness scores, so either the top number, the 0.68, or the bottom number, the 0.78. What Excel is going to do is assume that the column on the left is your X data and the column on your right is the Y data. In our case, that's correct, because the Y data are the data that you're trying to predict. And we're trying to predict the GPA based on the hardiness scores. So once you've got the numbers highlighted and you've let go of your mouse button, then there's another button I want you to press on. I've circled it here, got an arrow pointing at it, and made it very big in the middle. It looks like a bar graph with a blue, a yellow, and a red bar. Or actually it kind of looks like a bookcase, bookends, with a bunch of books in it. And if look up there on your menu, see if you find it. If you don't find it, that's okay. You can always press Insert Charts if you can't find this. These buttons are movable, and if you have kids, they might have moved them. Or if you have a spouse that's a nerd, she might have moved them, or he might have moved them. But look for it, and if it's there, you click on it, and that gives you your chart. If not, you go Insert Chart. So once you click on it, you get a dialog box. The dialog box looks like this, except yours should come up probably set on columns, and it should have little different graphs on the right. But what I want you to do is I want you to click where it says XY Scatter. Once you do that, the charts on the right should come up. Hopefully the highlighted one is the top one on the left, the one with no lines connecting the dots, or the little squares, or the little diamonds, no lines connecting them, just like the one in this picture. If that's the one that's highlighted, then we're in good shape. If not, click on the one that has no lines, so that it becomes a dark one. Once that's selected, then go down and click on Next at the bottom of this dialog box where the red arrow with the 3 is pointing. Once you've clicked there, you'll come to this. Here, written in black, written in white letters on black, it'll tell you where the page number is and in other words, sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, what sheet you're on, and where your data are. And I've put mine in pink here to make it easier to read. But you should look something like that. Now, if for some reason your Y data was not your right column, but was your left column, you could click on Series and tell Excel specifically which column has your X data and which has your Y. But we're set up correctly, so we don't need to do that. So we'll just go down to the bottom and we'll click Next. Once you click Next, you get this third dialog box. Now, I'm on this Title tabs, and I assume you will be too. But if not, make sure that you've clicked Titles at the top so that it says Chart Title, Value X-axis, Value Y-axis. I'm going to type Hardy where it says Value X-axis and GPA where it says Value Y-axis. Once I've typed those in into those boxes, the computer will put it on the right-hand side into my graph. So now underneath the X-axis it says Hardy, and underneath the Y-axis it says GPA. Now I want to click on a different tab at the top. Instead of Titles, I want to click on Legend. Here I've got a red arrow pointing to Legend, so you can see where I'm talking about. So if you click on Legend, you'll get this sheet, this part of the dialog box. And you'll see on the left-hand side of that dialog box, it says Show Legend, and it has a check mark. Well, I don't want it to show this legend where it says Series 1. I don't want that to show. So I'm going to click again on that box, and the check mark will go away. And then it's no longer showing that legend. Once I've done that, I'll click Next, and that'll take me to the fourth of the 4 dialog boxes. This is asking me where I want to put the chart. The default is to put it on the same page as my data, but I'd prefer to put it on a whole new sheet. So I'm going to click As New Sheet. Once I do that, the radio button will switch from As Object In to As New Sheet, and the rectangle to the right of As New Sheet will become darkened, and it says Chart 1. That's the name it's going to put on the tab at the bottom of the page that has the chart. Chart 1 isn't very informative to me. I'd rather have it tell me that it has to do with Hardy and GPA. So I'm going to type in here Hardy GPA. And then I'm going to click on Swedish. Oh, I can't find Swedish. Well, I guess Finnish will have to do. I'll click on Finish. And there's my graph. And you can see the red arrow is pointing at the tab at the bottom, and the tab now says Hardy GPA. So when I pull up this worksheet, I'll know to click on this tab to get my Hardy GPA graph. So there's a pretty nice graph, but I don't see a regression line in it. It's not that neat a graph. Well, let's add the regression line. We can add some new things. Up near the top where it says File, Edit, View, look for one that says Chart. Here I'll point with it with this arrow. Do you see where Chart is? Well, if we click on Chart, the menu will come down, and we'll want to click on Add Trend Lines. Now it may take a second for Add Trend Lines to show up. You may have to click on the little down arrow at the bottom of your chart menu to get it to show up. But when it does show up, click Add Trend Lines. Then, once you've clicked on Add Trend Lines, you'll get this dialog box. Here, I want to make sure that the darkened box is the one above Linear. That's the one we want. We want Linear to be the one that's got a check mark by it. Or I mean, to be the one that's darkened, because we're doing a linear regression. Notice it can do logarithmic, polynomial, it can do power, exponential, or moving averages. It can do a lot of different things, but we'll just want to do linear. Once we've clicked on linear, then we're going to click on the tab that says Options. Do you see the tab that says Options? I've got a red arrow pointing to it. We'll click on that, and that'll bring us to this dialog box. And here all I want us to do is put a check mark next to display equation on chart and display R squared value on chart. Those are the two bottom items in this dialog box. We're putting check marks there. Then once those are checked, then we'll click OK. And we'll have our regression line. And not only do we have a regression line, we also have some equations. Oh, those equations are hard to read because they're right on the line. Let's change those. The way we can move those away from the line is we can click on the equations, and once we click on the equations, we should get this box going around the equation. Now the box has little squares in the corners. We're going to want, when I'm saying the box, I really mean that rectangle with the lined, gray lined rectangle that's going around the entire equation. I want you to click on the edge of that of the rectangle, but not on one of the square boxes. When you put your cursor on the rectangle line, it should turn into a four-arrowed kind of cursor. When it's like that, you can click on it, and then you can move it to a better location. Here, I've moved mine over to down away from the line a little bit. So that'll make it easier to see. Now let's see what this says. This says our equation for a line is y equals 4.0748x plus 0.0513. Well, that should be what we got. Actually, we'll check that in a minute, except our equation was backwards. Our equation said y equals 0.0513 plus 4.0748x. But in addition, the order doesn't matter. 4 plus 7 is the same as 7 plus 4. So don't be distraught by the change in order for the addition there. Underneath that, it says our R squared is 0.3532. Let's go click on sheet 1 at the bottom and see what R says. So I'll go down here and click on sheet 1, and this is our data and our answers. And yes, for R squared, we did get 0.3532. Once we round it to 4 decimals, it would be 0.3532 for our R squared. So our answer does match theirs. Our equation for the line was y equals 0.0513 plus 4.0748x, which is the same as theirs, just in a different order. Let me go back and click on the tab to get back to our chart. Okay. Now, do you see how on this page the chart has a gray kind of background? And that looks good on the screen, but if you print that out on some printers, it won't look good at all. So I'm going to try and get rid of that. The way I'm going to get rid of it is on the very far right edge of the gray, but not where there's any horizontal lines. Just where the gray edge meets the white edge. Do you see where I'm putting my cursor? My cursor is the white arrow. I've got the red arrow pointing to it because the white arrow is kind of small. But I'm going to click right on that line, and then it'll select it. And then I'll press delete, and the gray's all gone. Now there's some other things that I want to do to make this a prettier graph, because it's an accurate graph right now, but it's not very pretty. Partly, I don't think the numbers on the axes are large enough. They seem to be pretty small. So I'm going to make those bigger. So I'm going to go over to the y-axis, and I'll click on it. See where my cursor is. I'm pointing at it with a red arrow, but my cursor is a little white arrow. So I'll click right on that line. And then I'm going to double-click that line. And when I do, I'll get this dialog box. You can double-click on almost any item on this graph and change the way it looks. Here, it says patterns. And I could change the way the tick marks look. Or I could change the way the line looks. In this case, I'm happy with the thin line. I could make it thicker if I wanted to. I could make the line, the axis line itself, a different color or a heavier color. But I'm happy with the way it is. The next one is scale. That says what's the number. See, my y-axis starts at 0 and goes up to 4. I could change that. I could make it go up to 8, make it go up to 5,000 if I wanted to. The major units is I've got a break every half point, so it's a 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2. If I change this so that my major unit was 1, it would only say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I were to change it so it was 0.25, I'd go 0, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm not going to change any of these either, but I do want to change the font. So I'm going to click on the next tab, which is the Font tab, and I'll see this. It tells me that my numbers are Arial, they're in irregular, they're not bold or italic, and the size is 10, but 10 is a pretty small size. So I'm going to change that 10 to maybe 16. So here, I'll change it to 16. That'll make all the numbers bigger. Notice I could change the color of the numbers or the background on the numbers. I'm not going to do any of that. I'll just say OK and see what happens. There, the numbers on the left are bigger, and they do look better. Now, I can even change the way the dots look. Do you see each of these dots? Well, they're really diamonds here. But I could change the way they look by just double-clicking on any one of them. So I'll double-click on one of those dots, and I get this dialog box. Now, it says on the left side, it says line, and I don't have a line connecting the dots. So I've got none, and I'm going to leave that at none because I don't want lines connecting each dot. But I'll go over to the right side, and the marker is automatic. And it says I can change the style, the foreground, the background, the size. I think I'm going to change all of those. So let me change those. I'm changing the style to this little box with an X in it. I'll change the color of the X in it to a dark red, and the background, the X, to a pink. And I'm going to double its size to size 10. And then I'll click OK and see what that looks like. There, that looks different. I don't think I like it. I think I'd rather have circles. Well, I'm going to double click on things here for a minute and just change things and show you what it could look like. Yeah, I could make it look like that eventually by clicking on the X-axis. I could click on the formulas, give them a bigger print. So that's the way I think I'm going to have my graph look. And that's how you do graphing using Excel. That's how you do a scatter plot with a regression line that even has our answers to it. So thank you very much.